computer. We are recording. Here we go. Professional James, composed. Here we go. Life Happens is the podcast brought to you by 87%, the innovative digital platform that uses clinically designed assessments to make mental health tangible, allowing businesses and individuals to measure, understand, and improve their mental well-being. Hi, everyone. I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and marketing director of 87%. And in this series, I have the highly enviable job of speaking to inspirational people from the worlds of adventure, business, intelligence, military, the sports, and more, to get their take on life's ups and downs, the setbacks that they've overcome, how they've dealt with failure, to get to where they are at the pinnacles of their sector, all with the aim of helping you build positive mental health. Positive mental health really is the top of the agenda today because my guest is on a mission to empower us to speak up when we're struggling. And wow, what a story. In 2012, he suffered from a bad episode himself of poor mental health, and he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He needed to build his life back up from scratch, but he has used those experiences to fuel a passion for helping others through his motivational speaking and also his hashtag #AreWeOKUK mission. It's a game-changing social media movement that aims to inspire others and everyone to speak up. He's a fellow endurance runner. He's run 1,250 miles from the Colosseum in Rome all the way back to the London Eye. In the process, he raised £15,000 for the campaign against living miserably. He is a true mental well-being trailblazer. Welcome to Life Happens, Dan Keeley.
Hey, James. Great to be here. And thank you so much for such a warm introduction. That was lovely. And, you know, I've got to say right from the start, I'm so pleased that the universe has brought us together. It was meant to be, obviously, with your background and our shared passions. There's nowhere else in the world that I'd rather be than having this conversation with you this afternoon.
It is my absolute pleasure to have you. Is trailblazer the right word? I feel like it is. You're making such an impact in the world of mental health.
Well, I hit the trails this morning, if that's what you mean. Yeah, we can get to all of that, but your words, not mine.
Well, I'm certainly keeping with it. Dan, we're a mental health platform. The first and most important question to ask, and it's a question that is designed for people to be open, honest, vulnerable, even. How are you?
Yeah, it's the best question. It's always the best question, and I'm actually doing really well, James. It hasn't necessarily been the case over the past 12 months. It's, lockdown, coronavirus, uncertainty, just everything that came with that definitely threw me off at times over the past 12 months. And there have been periods where I felt really disconnected. I'm a people person. I want to be around positive people and thriving off people just like yourself, James, and connecting with audiences and, just having real conversations with real people. And that's what I love. And when I feel disconnected from that, then it definitely has a tendency to knock me. And I think a big part of that was feeling this disconnection from my mission and what I've dedicated my life towards. But, I'm in a really good place. December and January always goes very quiet for anybody in the professional speaking space. So I was getting a bit twitchy, but finally here we are in 2021, and this year has now called to light for me in a very good way. And, I'm just very grateful. I'm feeling in a calm, relaxed, grateful place right now. I'm running more than I have done in a couple of years. And I've been enjoying every moment I get to spend with my son, Maxwell, who's approaching his second birthday as well. So yeah, I'm in a really, really good place, James.
It's wonderful to hear that. I mean, obviously we've all struggled. We've all had difficult moments in the last year, isolation, etc., anxiety, fatigue. It's nice to hear a positive take on it. It's nice to hear that you've taken opportunities to spend more time with your son, to run more, to work on yourself. So very positive. But let's come on to you talk about your mission. Your story and mission are one of huge inspiration. We'll come on to the various parts of it. Perhaps start us, take us back to the beginning. Talk us through your early years before you properly recognized or understood your relationship with mental health.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, grew up in East Sussex. Had a really great upbringing with my older brother and sister who were twins, and we had a really great relationship between the three of us. But with my brother in particular, 4 years older than me, I was always pretty sporty and trying to keep up with him. Over the years, I was always pretty creative, pretty energetic, generally outdoors. Actually, I say that I was either outdoors or lying on the floor drawing cartoons in football stadiums. I was always quite, into drawing from a young age as well. But I had a really good childhood actually, and I was lucky enough to go skiing during my days at school, which had a big impact on me. I think we're going to touch on this, but the mountain environment is something that had a really big impact on me from a really young age. It just really opened my eyes to the different landscapes that are out there, and the effect that that can have on us. Did a degree in sports management at the University of Brighton, which was amazing. A couple of years playing for the South of England lacrosse team, and it was really during my university days where I realised I could run. Did the London Marathon during my degree as well. Just a pretty positive upbringing. But if we're telling the full story, and of course you know me, and very happy to have real conversations, there was one particular element of my upbringing which has affected the work that I do now in my adult life, and that was that I was sexually abused as a child. And I remember the day when I remembered what had happened to me. I was playing tennis with my friends at university, and I was completely exhausted. I'd given everything to the start of my degree, just dog tired. It was almost like my body was draining itself of every reserve in order to make way for this kind of epiphany moment. And it's amazing how the body will let you remember this kind of inner trauma that you may be holding on to unknowingly when it becomes strong enough to do so. So I was 21 when I had this light bulb moment about what had happened to me as a child. Didn't matter, it didn't affect how I was going about my daily life at the time. I forgave the person that abused me, but it was really from the age of 21 onwards where I recognized that things were a little bit shaky. It was almost as though after that moment, it was almost as though 20% of my inner confidence and trust and conviction dropped, and I was kind of making up with it with just energy, and just kind of unrestricted energy. That's the best way I can describe it. So it was really from the age of 21 onwards where things were a little bit shaky. I would have these periods of heightened mood, and then I'd completely exhaust myself and just have to disconnect for a couple of weeks. But no major issues from the age of 21 onwards. Of course, we're going to get to the severe episode, what happened in 2012, but generally speaking, really positive upbringing. Very lucky for the life that I've had to date in its entirety. But yeah, obviously it's definitely worth mentioning that particular chapter because it does help to paint the full picture.
Certainly. And it's interesting that, what age did that happen? And over those period between that age and the age of 21, it's amazing that the mind perhaps just, I don't know, shut it out. You sort of, I've had recently spoken to another individual who built a persona for himself that he called it his security guard, and it was that ability to sort of block negativity, and it was actually detrimental to his character because he ended up shutting people out. Did you have any sort of similarities with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. That definitely rings true with me. I had no idea that this had happened to me. I was 21 years old when I realized what had happened to me 11 years earlier. I was 10 years old when what happened. And how incredible is that? That your body and your mind will only let you remember this trauma that it's been holding on to all of these years when it feels that you're strong enough to deal with it. It's incredible. And the mind, the way the mind works just boggles me. And there is a book I still need to read, which is The Body Remembers. But yes, that certain sense of security and suppressing what had happened as a form of self-protection unknowingly, incredible, just incredible. So I'm certainly no expert on the area. I've still got a lot of education I want to do around my experiences as well. But in terms of the effects that has had on me, I mean, the only thing I can describe is when I did remember what happened to me, I had to make a choice whether I was going to be resentful and hold on to anger, or I was going to forgive the person and move on and realize that everybody has their weaknesses. And in that moment, 11 years earlier, this was way in the past, that particular person couldn't control their urges at the time. And, that's the decision I made pretty swiftly. So if anything, I just came away with that, that's the power of forgiveness, I guess. I felt, I've got to say, quite proud of myself, and I had a lot of support around me to get to that point. But I had a degree to get back to, and I had loads of positive things around me, lacrosse and everything else that was going on for me at the time. I had more positive things to channel my time, energy, and my focus into.
I mean, forgiveness is a very important and very deep concept. And a lot of people who go through mental health issues, whether it's depression or addiction, don't feel like they're able to forgive themselves. And sometimes actually forgiving yourself and not understanding that you are not to blame is the key to forgiving others. Was it for you? Was it like a light bulb epiphany moment where you just thought, right, he's forgiven? Or was there a journey of forgiveness over a period of time? How did the forgiveness manifest itself, I suppose?
It was a pretty quick decision, to be honest. I did have to, it was the Christmas holidays where I remembered it happened during my first term at university, so I had a natural 2-week break anyway. And I just wanted to make a call nice and early so I could just get back to my degree and just focus on what I needed to. 2 weeks to reflect and to think about how I was going to move forward in life, how I wanted to. And, I've got no question that there are some bigger things that I probably still carry with me in my adult life, and certain traits that I have which are directly linked to the experience I had when I was 10 years old. Besides obviously what we're going to be talking about with the mania and psychosis that did come in 2012, but there probably are some underlying trust issues that I probably still have, but I don't feel them. I don't knowingly go about the world with a certain amount of rules or anything like that to bond with people. Who knows? I'm just fortunate that I can work and have great relationships and pursue my passions and everything else I'm sure we're going to chat about. But I live a very happy life, and there is certainly no resentment or anything like that.
Incredible. Well, you mentioned passions. Let's talk about one of them, the outside, the mountains. You're a skiing instructor, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, again, credit to my parents. They saved just enough for me to get me on my school ski trip when I was 12 or 13 years old. I can't quite remember which year it was, but I think those 2 lessons that I had on a dry slope before going out to Austria on that ski trip were invaluable, because I then was in the advanced group when we went on that school ski trip, and I had almost one-to-one instruction with 2 of my mates, and it was just the most life-changing week. And within half a day, I thought my skiing instructor is the coolest guy I have ever met. This big, overbearing Austrian blonde powerhouse of a skiing instructor who just floated down the ski slopes, moguls or otherwise. I just thought he was the coolest guy I've ever met. And one day I just had to become a skiing instructor. So I graduated from Brighton Uni, 2008, bounced around London in various jobs. And, it was during that time where, credit to my wife, Georgie, she was like, you've got to do this thing that's been under your skin for so long. You've been talking about qualifying as an instructor for so long. So, make it happen. And, I had 6 months to work my butt off to save enough to get out to Val d'Isère and spend 6 weeks in the mountains, qualify as a BASI level 2. And that was my first taste of, giving this gift to school children, coming out to the mountains and giving them that confidence to not just enjoy the mountain environment safely, but to look up and to breathe and to look at this beautiful landscape, which is so stripped back. There's rarely anything on the mountain environment that doesn't need to be there. That minimalist landscape, that headspace, and really get them to enjoy the bigger picture of being out in the mountains, not just, perfecting your snow plows during those first few days and getting onto a red run by the end of the week. It was much more than that. And, empowering them to be confident in that environment. There's just nothing like it. And, if I won the lottery, I'd probably be a full-time skiing instructor, coupled with the work that I do, of course. But yeah, the mountain environment, it's just, it's just pure escapism. It's beautiful.
It's just nature, though, isn't it? I mean, there's the Japanese word for it. It's the art of spending time in nature to improve how you feel, you improve your mood. And there is a scientific evidence to show that actually the trees and nature in general actually improves our mood. So it's a wonderful message to give to children who are head down in their phones, to actually look up and take in your surroundings. I love, and it's the art of basically spending time in nature to improve your well-being. Look it up. You learned it here first. But then I suppose your relationship with Europe, perhaps then, I don't know, how do we phrase this? Perhaps then took a slightly different turn to the one that you might have expected or might not have foreseen, because it was on a trip to Europe that you suffered with a manic episode, and you were admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Perhaps, but build that story up. Talk me through what you remember of that.
Yeah, it's a big story which we'll try and condense. So, the mountains have played a big part in my life. Sports and creativity had always been there, but social impact was always quite close to my heart from a young age. I always wanted somehow to play my part to make the world a better place, just like you guys do at 87%. And it was in 2011. I was bounced around different jobs in London, and I wasn't feeling as though I was applying my skills to their fullest with my work. But in January 2012, I got offered this incredible position as the community manager for a snow sports charity that changes the lives of underprivileged inner city young people by getting them out in the mountains and developing just changing their lives through the power of life skills, qualifications, vocational opportunities, skiing, snowboarding, but everything that comes with those sports, with communication, teamwork, resilience, all that great stuff. So suddenly here I was in this perfect occupation where I could apply my every one of my lived experiences into this role. And I felt like this huge weight got lifted off my shoulders. I put so much pressure on myself over the years to impact society in a positive way by using my natural gifts, I guess. And here I was with the perfect job that was written for me. So, all that energy and those ideas and that adrenaline, it just started really dialing up throughout the first half of 2012. So, I just knew that for every £550 I raised for the charity, whether that was a new fundraising event or new, challenge, or building the community around the charity, I could get another young person out to the mountains and change their life. So kind of this impulse just started dialing up and up and up and up. And, I just stopped looking after myself. I was putting the welfare of these young people way ahead of myself. I wasn't sleeping. In April 2012, I averaged 2.5 hours sleep a night for over a fortnight. It was just relentless. And, I had so much conviction and clarity in all these ideas I was going to develop to raise money that, I'd just wake up at 3:20 in the morning and I had to get up and I had to get these ideas out of my system. And, Georgie, my fiance at the time, now my wife, would wake up and there'd be streams of paper all over the lounge. You could barely see the floor. It was just that kind of Carrie and Homeland, that Limitless film, where it's just streams of energy pouring out of me. And, over those 6 months, I just started thinking, if I'm giving this so much energy to change the lives of these young people, why wouldn't I try and do the same for society? And if I was going to, focus on the UK, why wouldn't I try and change the world and set out to ease as much struggling that's going on out of the world as possible? So you get a sense of all of this dialing up, believing I was the next big social entrepreneur, the next Steve Jobs, the next Mark Zuckerberg. And we booked a 2-week holiday out to Italy, and obviously we'll start joining the dots now. But we booked this 2-week holiday out to Italy, myself and Georgie. And when we touched down on the tarmac, in Italy, I believed I was the chosen one. I believed I'd been put on this planet to ease as much of the world's suffering as possible. And this point of singularity I got to was to try and force the world to slow down and follow their hearts. But of course, the irony is that I was going at 200 miles an hour. So, I was giving away money I didn't have. I bought a bottle of wine for every room in the hotel we were staying at. I promised the family with this undeveloped, beautiful rustic hotel near Lake Garda. I was promising them that I was going to come back and we were going to renovate the whole hotel. This is going to be my new home away from home. So it was just, it's just this grandiosity. It was this relentless energy. It was this grandiosity. I was giving away all of my possessions and my money, which I didn't really have. And, Georgie's number one priority, of course, was to get me to a safe place. So with the help of the family, we'd pack up our little white Fiat 500 and start making our way over to the hospital at Verona. And, I was really happy to go along with anything as long as anybody didn't get in the way of me getting these ideas out of my system. But what we're really building up to is that things were just getting so dangerous. My energy was just too much for anybody to bear. So we pull over on the hard shoulder of this motorway, 4 p.m, northern Italy, near Lake Garda. And I get out of the car and start running down the hard shoulder of the motorway, stripping off just to my khaki shorts, white shirt, palms up, and started stepping onto the motorway. So slow lane, middle lane, fast lane, stop the traffic, tears of elation running down my face, arms outstretched, pure euphoria. So I felt, not that I'm endorsing any of this, of course. And I felt like I'd done it. I felt like this was the moment that our global society was going to start again. And we're going to really pay attention to the things which really matter. And I was the messenger. I was the one who had been selected to ease the world's suffering. So by definition, James, I'd completely lost my mind. I'd completely lost my mind.
It staggers me that you're there on the fast lane of the motorway. The world is flying by at however fast, who knows what speed. Your mind is obviously going at who knows what speed, and yet you have a sort of sense of serenity at this point, and I don't know, you seem quite calm in being able to just walk out into lanes of traffic. It's amazing that the mind can overpower us like that.
It's really scary. Yeah, when I think about it now, and you can imagine what Georgie was going through, right? There's no traces of mental health conditions in my family. Georgie had never been exposed to anybody who had experienced psychosis, and she's petrified. And this was just before smartphones really took off as well. So she's out there completely by herself, looking at her fiance who's lost his mind. What the hell is he doing? And you're absolutely right. I felt, and actually I'm still writing my book, James, at the moment. And, I just had to revisit this chapter, and I felt as though I had this perfect feeling of elevation over not just the traffic, but our global society. And I felt as though I was almost floating above the earth, looking almost at myself, just as kind of, my body was doing what it was doing, but I felt like I was almost floating, and it was almost as though the world was about to beckon to every one of my commands in terms of slowing down and connecting to each other again, and putting down the guns, and all of the pain that the world experiences. And it almost, what it really felt like, I guess, is that I could breathe, because suddenly all this energy that I had in my system was being expressed. It was being expressed, and so therefore I could take a breath. And even when the police car showed up and the ambulance crew, and I remember trying to recruit them to become my new head of security and chief medical officers, and had all this conviction going through my system. I was doing all of that with this sense of clarity. I had such conviction in what this moment was going to represent for our human race. But yeah, it was pretty clear that they just needed to strap me down, get me to the hospital, pump me full of drugs, and get me to sleep.
Let's talk about that recovery process. Obviously, a long period of time. You've talked about being broken. You've talked about building your life. Well, you've talked about wanting to take your own life, but then talking about building it back up slowly. What was it that? I mean, it must have been such small gains each day. What was it that got you through that, and thinking, I've got such a long way to go? How do you take those little steps with the prospect that there might be recovery for you further down the line?
Yeah, so it's a really beautiful question, and of course, my journey of recovery will look completely different from anybody else's. But I'm hoping there are some snippets of what I went through which can help other people out there. So, certainly the back end of 2012 was a really dark chapter. I'd gone from believing I was the chosen one to being bedbound, curtains closed, debilitated, the weight of the world now on my shoulders, just completely embarrassed and cut off. And as you say, I was suicidal. but great people around me. I was critical, so I had counselling sessions pretty early on, and I remember the definitive moment actually, and it was early 2013. So 2012 was what it was, but in 2013, I hadn't really gone out in public for 6 months, and I remember Georgie just saying, "Look, even if you can just walk up the road to get some milk and some cereal today, that even if that's what you achieve today, I'll be so proud of you." As well as brushing your teeth, that was me. But even just brushing my teeth every day was really hard, James, just to get out of bed to do that. There was no point. I was hopeless. So I remember that day where I was like, okay, I can do this. Snooze, 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 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Okay, I can go and get this milk and cereal. So I went up to the supermarket, picked up the milk, no problem. But in the cereal aisle, I was so overwhelmed with color and choice. And, I was really fearful of making a wrong choice with a £2 coin because my mind was so broken. And that is the most kind of macro example I can give you, where I was petrified of making the wrong decision with this £2 coin. So it was in the 10 minutes walking home from from Sainsbury's, where I was like, I just need to strip this all back and completely start again. I'm broken. I need to completely start again. So what I now know I started practicing was minimalism. So, this is the one thing which I'd endorse all day long. And I'd recommend anybody just explore what minimalism can do for you. Because essentially, in simple terms, it's stripping away life's excess to focus on what really matters most. So I went through that process. I was decluttering my physical possessions, which weren't either adding value to my life or which were meaningful. Then it went down to email subscriptions and responsibilities. I was very lucky to have time off work, so effectively through this decluttering process, what I was actually doing was giving myself permission to put myself first, ultimately, and really then be really intentional with how I was spending my time, my energy, and attention. I.e., not to repeat the same mistakes by giving all of that away to other people, but focus on my health, my relationships, my passions, my growth, contributing to others, but doing it in a really balanced way with my health number one. So this really started to work for me. And so with the reflective counseling that I was having, where I was sharing this journey with them, it was really, really powerful. That process of stripping it back, starting again, practicing intentionality day in, day out, as we're doing right now with this conversation. This was a no-brainer to have this conversation today. So being really clear with how I wanted to keep my life in balance, I guess, moving forward, and continually declutter the excess to focus on the things which really matter, really started to work for me. So fast track over the next 5 years, a lot of sharing this, a lot of vulnerability, being open about my experiences, naturally having a bit of courage to speak up about what I'd been through. And I always say the 3 things that really started to happen when I just spoke openly about my experiences was that I felt much lighter. Every time I did, I felt much lighter. It kind of made sense of the experiences that I went through. I built an even greater support network around me. So I had far more people, you included, no doubt. If you saw that my, I don't know, social media channels were lighting up too much, you might reach out to me to say, Dan, how are you doing? So my dream team was getting bigger and bigger. And then the most beautiful thing was that I was giving permission for other people to be vulnerable. It was amazing. So, whether that was one-to-one or a friend's barbecue or in the workplace or, progressively on different stages, I was giving permission for other people just to open up and to be, look, we're all on this journey together. We all go through these experiences. And, this just happened time and time again. So this really feeds into why I had to mark, what felt like a really positive point in this 5-year journey of recovery by taking on a significant project to share this on a massive scale, which of course needed to incorporate Italy somehow.
Tell me about that. I mean, firstly, well, before you do, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, it is a wonderful story, and it's wonderful to hear. Obviously, it's not wonderful to hear of a manic episode, but it is wonderful to hear of that, the ability to come back from that. And I love the concept of stripping everything back and just focusing on yourself. Self-awareness is something that we don't practice enough, in my estimation. Which brings me actually onto the app, the 87% app. You've had a play with that. Did that teach you anything new about your mental fitness, your mental health? Were there areas that jumped out at you as interesting? What were your thoughts on the sort of the measurement and analysis that the app takes you through?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think there's a few things really strangely with this. I always think things happen for a reason at the right time. And the reason I say that is the whole notion that you can't improve it if we can't, if we can't measure it, we can't improve it, which I love. This is a relatively new thing for me. Even with the adventure running, and even with, I don't know, my training for the London Marathon, I was never really big on the measurement side of things. I always knew then that I had to run 26.2 miles. If I could run 20 miles, I could do the rest on the day, that kind of thing. I was always quite relaxed about all of this stuff. But, even recently I've really kind of upped my game with measuring my pace and my cadence with my own trail running these days. So this has come into my life at the right time, is what I'd say, in terms of, we can't measure it, we can't improve it. And, I love the app. I think it's brilliant. The categories are really well put, really easy to digest. I love the content. I love the fact that it's scientifically backed. It's not just anecdotal. I think in terms of my own reflection, I'll be honest, I haven't completed the full assessment, but I'm probably 75% of the way through. And I think it's pretty accurate. And what I will say, even if I go about the world now as a mental health activist, I do not by any means have it all figured out. I've got a certain set of lived experiences that work for me. I'm always trying to do better. Fortunately, I have to keep myself in check with my sleep and eating, in particular with bipolar. They're the two key things which allow me to be on a level pegging to do what I do, and to be a great dad and a great friend and a professional and all the rest of it. But of course, I am always looking to do better. And I can't tell you the number of podcast episodes I've digested over the past 10 years, and self-improvement and all that stuff. But it's always a means to an end. I'm very clear on what I want my life to stand for by the end. And, I do know that my health is number one, based on the experiences I've been through. So certainly having something like the 87% app to have that own self-reflection, to be the healthiest version of myself moving forward in life, I think is beautiful. And I think it's come into my life at exactly the right time.
Wonderful. I love that phrase, being the best version of yourself. I think that's very pertinent, because you've just pointed out that no one has it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. I'm a positive guy, but there's always room for improvement. And I love another thing that I've heard in one of your talks, that you said that we're all suffering. Can you expand on that and perhaps explain how we can work on ourselves to improve, no matter whether we feel we're positive or not?
Yeah, I guess I can't really speak to that last bit of what you just mentioned too much. But in terms of the fact, I absolutely believe, and this fuels why I do what I do, is I do absolutely believe that every single one of us has something going on underneath the surface that, if we knew we had the safe and supportive environment to speak about it, and we had the courage to do so, we would feel better for it. I absolutely believe that if all of us were given a free voucher from the government to have a really honest conversation, let's say every 3 months, for a day, to have a really powerful conversation about anything that you've got going on underneath the surface, I guarantee that 100% of us would open up about one particular aspect of our life that we've got going on. And this all comes from 2013. This is 8, what are we now, 2021. So over 8 years of having these conversations day in, day out, again, whether it was at that barbecue or just in the workplace, or, my family or my friends or wherever, I can't tell you, obviously through my experiences of being open about, what I went through, and then seeing, the calls come in and the emails and, the comments just to say, do you mind if we have a conversation? My brother's got this going on, or, I've been really struggling with this aspect of my life. I just want somebody to talk to about this thing I've got going on at the moment. And it just happened time and time again. And these are people in my world who you would think have it all figured out. The confident, outgoing types, or the self-assured introvert who is absolutely tunnel visioned on their work in a great way, because that's who they are. Every single one of us has something going on. And, I was lucky enough to be a part of a panel discussion recently with an organization with, 8,000 employees globally. And, I had a really fortunate position to host a panel discussion with their senior leadership team, and some of them had lots of yellow and green energy and were very happy to go there and have these conversations. But I remember the chief financial officer, he said, this really isn't for me, I've never really gone there, and I deal with things in my own personal way. And this was before the session went live, and I said, well, tell me about that. How do you deal with the pressure that you face on a daily basis. So he's like, well, I'll go swimming. Okay, great. And how does that feel? He just really started to open up that, that was his way of dealing with stress. And and he bonded with the men in his swimming group and everything else, and that was his place to go to. And then just through that conversation, he realized, actually, this is the point, isn't it? Is we've got loads of introverts and financial people in our organization, but actually, you've just made me realize, just by me sharing that I have stress, I have pressures that I face on a daily basis, but my swimming buddies are my go-to. And that was a beautiful thing. So I remember when Stuart, his name, was opened up on that session, it was beautiful, and that perfectly encapsulated what we're talking about here. The fact that every single one of us has something going on, whether you're launching or reigniting a podcast, whether you're a father, whether you're a mother, I don't know, who's got their mother who's been affected by COVID. We've all got pressures that we face on a daily basis, and we can chat about are we okay in a minute, but that's the stuff which I'm really passionate about, is not on a clinical level, but just to create these safe and supportive environments to have courageous conversations together about the things that really matter most. So I try, I'm not always necessarily saying we all need to be really open and vulnerable about our mental health. That's not the big flag that I fly. It's very much the fact that when we find that safe and supportive environment to speak openly and courageously about the things which we face in our day-to-day lives, then, we're all going to feel much lighter for it and have a bigger dream team around us and inspire future generations to be open as well.
I love it. I love it. We'll come on to running, because I can't not cover running. But you just mentioned Are We Okay UK, your mission. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I think after Rome to home, which we haven't quite got there yet, but I just knew that after 2017, I needed something bigger than just myself to create the world that I believe in. Again, I've got very clear. I think because of what I went through, I got very, very clear on the why I went through what I did. So I drew a lot of meaning from the pain that I experienced back in 2012. And from that, you can't go through an experience like that and not ask yourself the big questions in life. And so I've gone to the end of my life. I've sat down with my 100-year-old self and had a reflective conversation. So, with that clear means to an end, I knew that my voice is only going to travel so far. So if I could create something bigger than myself that is shareable and effectively stands for a vision that every local community has a safe and supportive environment where anybody can come together to have these conversations. That would be a beautiful world if we could live in that. So it's slow starting. It's collaborative. I don't know where the journey is going to take me, but I've just got this North Star. I've got a podcast, a basic website. I've created these mini events here in Kent, and who knows where that journey is going to take me. But if I can arrive at the end and to look back and to know that Are We Okay as a brand, as a social movement, as a social enterprise, has created these powerful conversations and played its part in a constructive way to ease the suffering of other people out there, then I'll be pretty proud of that by the end of my life.
Wish you the absolute best of luck with it. It's such an important initiative. I've absolutely no doubt it will change the lives of many. And you mentioned Rome to home. Here we are. Let's talk about it. You're a man after my own heart, a runner, fellow runner. Tell me about the Rome to Colosseum to the London Eye adventure and the funds raised and the amazing story there.
Yeah, it was an oil painting, that I was lucky enough to live in for 65 days. And as I say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years on from 2012 and what happened that year, and again, just seeing the effect of being open about my experiences on other people, I just knew I had to do something big with this. I had to do something to celebrate, this journey of recovery. Not to say that I'm out of the woods by any means. I still have to manage myself day to day now, but to celebrate that I'm in a really good place after 5 years again from that chapter. It had to incorporate Italy somehow. I needed to bring this kind of story full circle. It had to make sense in my mind. And I remember I was actually opposite the London Eye the year before, thinking, what if I was to go back to Italy somehow and take on a huge adventure challenge to share my story on a national scale? What if it starts at the Colosseum to bring it full circle? Think about the London Eye. And then suddenly Rome to home popped into my head, those words, opposite the London Eye. And I remember as soon as those words popped into my head, it was almost as though the adventure had already been completed. And this was a year before I'd even started it. So it was a no-brainer. And we all have these moments in life of absolute clarity about where we want to take our lives, and I knew what I needed to do. So over the course of the next year, through 2016, looking ahead to 2017, I had to get my mental health in a really good place. I had to get physically in shape. I had to get all my gear together. I set up a website and figure out a way to broadcast not just the adventure, but to tell my story by using the adventure as a platform to do it. So I just couldn't think of a better way to share this story than by returning to Italy, setting off from the Colosseum on the 25th of August 2017 with me and my backpack, and just put one foot in front of the other all the way back to the London Eye, and use it as a huge platform to share my story. And I decided to raise money for the campaign against living miserably, who are all about keeping men alive by talking. And that just really resonated with me at the time. Really forward-thinking charity, and just loved everything they stood for. And we smashed it, with the support from the charity and a lot of love and support from people back home, and my dream team on my WhatsApp group every day, and researching the pilgrimage route which I was roughly following. It was just this beautiful oil painting that I got to live in and taste and smell and breathe for 65 days. And just picture where I was 5 years earlier. I didn't want to be here anymore, and here I was with that golden sunrise every morning through Tuscany, winding my way up to Siena, feeling really strong, averaging 20 miles a day, meeting all these beautiful Italians, a lot of people still walking from the Alps down to Rome, and everybody wanting to ask me what I was doing running the other way by myself. Staying in these beautiful convents and wild camping with my, just my little bivvy bag, and not knowing where I'd end up every night, and just keeping it beautifully simple. Had my little mascot with me, LB, little bear. Checking in with people back home, spending my evenings putting these little 5-minute video edits together, which are all on YouTube if anybody punches in Rome to home. Working my way up to the Alps, which was just this beautiful 5-day adventure in its own right, going up and over the Great St. Bernard Pass near Mont Blanc. Just a beautiful, beautiful chapter. Dropping down to Lake Geneva, spending sunset with Freddie Mercury, who spent a lot of his life there. There's, the bronze statue. And, I just remember then listening to Queen all the way home past Lake Geneva, and leaving Switzerland, not remembering much of France. It was all pretty flat. A 54-mile day running into Paris to arrive in style. My brother, who was flying with the Red Arrows at the time, giving me a flyover on the same day that I clocked 1,000 miles on my adventure. Wow. was the same day that they were returning from a tour in the Middle East. So I had my own flyover from the Red Arrows as I approached Paris. You couldn't have written it.
Wow, we can boast that.
Totally. And then just... approaching the English Channel. My sister greeted me on the French side. She got on the channel to cross, she got on the ferry to come and greet me on the French side before coming back over, arriving in East Sussex where I grew up, 5 days leading up to London. And then it was just this beautiful, beautiful day on the 28th of October, 2017. The red, white and blue was out. The champagne was flying everywhere. It was a glorious evening. We had an hour on the London Eye as well, just to celebrate it. And it was just this beautiful, beautiful checkpoint. And actually, this came up recently, James, so I still don't know who it was, but at the London Eye, somebody whispered in my ear, "Thank you for what you've done over the past 65 days. You have not forced me, but you've shown me how to slow down and follow my heart," which was exactly what I was trying to force the world to do 5 years earlier. So it just represented a hugely powerful celebration at the end of that 5-year journey.
So powerful. And even if it's just that one person that you've made, it's worth it, isn't it? That just hearing that from one individual, it's just, I can imagine it must have filled your heart with joy at the journey through to that moment. There was one, I want to move on to some quick fire questions, but there was one thing that you, in that story, that really jumped out at me. And that was, even before taking on the challenge, you sort of envisaged that you were going to achieve it. And I love that the power of the mind in helping you get over that hurdle. I, as you know, do a lot of running as well. And a lot of people say to me, in response to me saying, I've just run however many miles,
100 miles, wasn't it?
100 miles is the latest. It will be longer than that by the end of this year. But the automatic, it's like a trigger automatic, even without thinking about it, response that I often get is, "Oh, I could never do that." And this sort of innate negativity, this negativity that's built into us that limits ourselves, is so, well, limiting. And yet, if actually you can envisage yourself doing something, whether it be running 5 kilometers or running from Rome to London or running 100 miles in one go, or getting a job promotion, or improving the relationships that you have with your friends and family, buying a car, it doesn't matter what that goal is. There is so much to be said for that, the mental process of seeing yourself achieving it in advance.
Yeah, I really, really love that, and you're absolutely right. Rome to Home was my biggest manifestation of this. But for anybody else listening to this, it may be starting that podcast you've been thinking about for so long, writing your book, starting that business, reconnecting with that family member. They're your Rome to Homes. Rome to Home was mine. This is different for everybody, but you are absolutely right. And I can't tell you the amount of time I spent on Google Earth over the course of that year, steadily flying over the whole route and just visualizing and smelling it and tasting it and, thinking what's the best that could happen. Not what's the worst that could happen. I remember, everybody goes into these things with different mindsets. And, one of my uncles in particular was, let's have a plan B. What happens if it goes wrong, and X, Y, Z. And, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I'm going into this thing with what is the best that could happen. And, fortunately, there have been chapters in my life where I had that conviction to become a skiing instructor, with the lacrosse, with the London Marathon, with Rome to Home. I've had these moments of clarity and conviction. And this is why I love the work of Mel Robbins. If anybody's listening to this and you're really looking for that courage to just say, I'm going to go for this, Mel Robbins is a beautiful thought leader in this space with her 5-second rule. And basically she champions the fact that if we have a compulsion to do something, to pick up the phone, to go and talk to that person over there, to commit to that running adventure, we've got 5 seconds from a moment of impulse of doing something before your other parts of your brain will kick in, and then you've got the self-doubt and the questioning, and then you think about your situation and you think, oh, I can't quite do that. Whereas, trust those 5 seconds, make a note, send that text, talk to that person, journal, blog, whatever.
Sign up to run an ultra marathon. Yeah.
Sign up to run an ultra marathon. For me, I got home and registered the domain name roamtohome.com. And for me, that was this kind of, the defining act of saying I'm going to do this thing. But Mel Robbins, I can't recommend her work enough. But yeah, the power of visualization is really huge. Why not ask yourself what is the best that could happen? And I've got to tell you, I woke up every day out there so grateful. I bounced out of bed every morning thinking, I'm so lucky to be out here doing what I'm doing. I had created it for myself, fine, but I was so lucky to be out there. And I said, what is the best that's going to happen today? And usually far greater things happened. It was just full of color and love and warmth and generosity. I didn't have one issue from start to finish. I didn't have a single blister, nothing. It was incredible. And what's your Rome to Home? That's the beautiful question I'm going to leave the listener right now. And if you're looking for the courage to pursue it, then check out Mel Robbins as well.
Wonderful. And I love the passion where you speak about the sort of senses involved as well. It's a multi-sensual experience, and this is exercise, running, kayaking, lacrosse, whatever it is, and actually it comes back to Shinrin Yoku. I've remembered is what it's called. It's just a sort of ability to be outside and experience nature and feel better and improve your mental well-being by sort of taking in the smells and sounds and tastes and sort of physical experience of it, as well as improving your mental side. So thank you very much, Dan. Dan is worth mentioning, a keynote speaker. Any businesses, schools, NHS trusts, conferences, whoever you are looking for, as you can tell, a very powerful and inspiring speaker, do reach out. Before some quick fire questions, which we ask everyone, Dan, perhaps tell us the sort of topics that you cover for those.
Yeah, well, thanks for mentioning it, James. And every talk's slightly different, whether it is for a school, a conference, NHS trust, a bit of business, social enterprise. But yeah, the power of vulnerability, obsessive simplicity, the mental adventure, the fact that we're all on this journey together, compassion and resilience during COVID-19, bipolar, men's mental health, sometimes just adventure running. These are, all different topics that we can dive into in more detail, obviously with key takeaways on different ones. And, obviously being part of the mental health landscape, I wouldn't do this stuff if I didn't do my diligence with best practices out there as well to pull into my work. But yeah, just, very lucky, to be able to share my experiences and seemingly leave people enthused to speak up about the things which really matter most to them, and who knows, to break through with something that they've got going on in their lives to feel lighter, and to feel like they can tackle anything that we've got going on ahead of us with the lives that we live. But yeah, of course, I'd welcome anybody reach out to me, and yeah, lucky to say that I love what I do.
And very important to spread the message that we're all in this together. More people really need to hear what you have to say. So yeah, please. On which note, best way to get in touch with you?
Probably on email, dan@dankeeley.co, or I'm on pretty much any social media channel at I am Dan Keeley. But yeah, please do reach out.
Wonderful. A few quick questions we ask everyone. Firstly, is there anything that is an absolute non-negotiable that you do regularly to help your mindset or help improve your mood?
Trail running.
Beautiful. What makes you good at what you do?
Always reminding myself that it's not about me. I'm just a vehicle through which these conversations can happen. It's never really about me.
Okay. You mentioned you'd had a conversation with a 100-year-old Dan, but let's flip that. What would you say to a young Dan?
Just, I think, go easy on yourself and just know that it's all going to work out for the best. Enjoy the journey a little bit more. You're way too hard on yourself. Enjoy the ride.
Maybe slow down a bit. Yeah.
And definitely slowing down is a constant in my life for sure.
Beautiful. And any other people, places, books, things, ideas, anything that you've taken inspiration from recently?
Yeah, well, I'm always, pulling inspiration from everyone and anybody. I'm ultimately a huge fan of anybody who is really clear on what happiness and success means to them and has the courage to pursue it. I always gravitate towards anybody who has that sense of clarity about them. But I think, yeah, let me just think. Recently, I think in terms of the whole minimalism conversation, I can't recommend the work of Greg McKeown enough, and his book Essentialism. And it's beautiful. Really, really strong parallels between what he talks about with essentialism and the world of minimalism. So between Greg McKeown and the minimalists, actually, you'll be well on your way to the world of minimalism, and how I think we could all benefit from that, because it's stripping away whatever your excess is and making way for whatever means the most to you. So the world of minimalism for sure. And I think in terms of the whole mental health space, Johan Hari is a beautiful thought leader. He's an amazing speaker, a great author. Check out his TED Talk, Johan Hari. But his book, Lost Connections, is a great thing, because it's, he's gone on a huge journey to get to the root causes of why we're prescribing more antidepressants and rates of suicide and depression are going up. And he wanted to understand, is it purely biological, or are there things going on in our lifestyles which are affecting this? And 7 out of the 9 causes that he discovered were actually, it's all to do with our lifestyles and the societies that we created as a global society. So, I'm not going to pull his work to pieces, but Johan Hari and his book Lost Connections is incredible, and he's given a TED Talk as well. So yeah, just a couple in there, but I'm inspired by what you're doing, James. I'm inspired by anybody who is all for the greater good, and great to be on this journey alongside you.
That's very kind of you to say so. And a book in the pipeline as well, which will, I'm sure, be an inspirational piece in the future.
Book is in the
frame on that?
Sorry?
Time frame on that?
Time frame? No, actually, at the moment. I'm in talks with the publisher as we speak. So, if we're having this conversation in a couple of weeks' time, then maybe. But it's looking good, and it's going to be out into the world before we know it.
Keep your eyes peeled, people. It will
keep your eyes peeled.
It will be worth picking up a copy. Dan, I used the word trailblazer at the beginning. I'm sticking with it. You are just so passionate and so enthusiastic about this this mission. And it is so important that we talk, that we open up, you say it's not about being vulnerable all the time, but having the ability to, build a support network around you, having something to fall back on, a way of dealing with stress, whether it's swimming, whether it's running, whether it's lacrosse. There's just so much to take from the last hour. I'm absolutely thrilled that you agreed to come on. I've just been sort of enraptured by what you've saying for the last hour. So thank you so much, and best of luck with the mission. And I hope we can speak again soon.
Definitely, James. And we'll head out for a run together before we know it.
Sounds like a plan. Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. For me, that was a wonderful hour spent with a warm and passionate guy who is genuinely trying to make the world a better place. But Dan has come to that mission through a period of severe mental breakdown and a long and drawn-out process of rebuilding. Almost a decade on from that serious episode, you can tell how grateful Dan is for the life that he's living, and he pours that gratitude into his mission to get people to speak up. Amongst so many critical messages in that interview, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and this year's theme is nature. You can hear how passionate Dan is about spending time outside and his love particularly of the mountain environment because of the power of the outdoors to improve our well-being and the positive impact that nature can have on us. I think we can all take a leaf from Dan's book. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment and share it with your friends, and check back soon for the next episode of Life Happens.